And welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the story behind the story. Wednesday, the 23rd day of November. Yeah. Tomorrow is Turkey Day. I hope you have all got either your turkey in the oven or your ham or your prime rib, as the case may be. Oh, what a time to be thankful. Really, we got to look at a lot of the good things going on, not just all of the negativity. I know it's like my friends have said many times. It would in the media, as far as newsprint is concerned, if it doesn't bleed, it doesn't read. If there's not controversy or shocking stories, it really doesn't get legs. But, there's so many good things to be thankful for. Again, we talked about this yesterday. Let's continue on in the discussions here with that. The good thing to focus on is, again, the gross domestic product figures. I don't know how many of you listeners have even thought about it or even checked, again, the World Bank productivity numbers. They do a good job in graphing each country, basically, that's autonomous as far as what they produce, what they add to the world economy. America is so incredibly blessed. It doesn't matter if you measure the economy in terms of dollars, which are Federal Reserve notes, folks. Doesn't matter if you measure them in renminbi, the Chinese currency, or Chinese yuan. It doesn't matter if you even measure them in terms of just a widget. Okay, but as long as every other economy is measured the same way, it still shows how incredibly blessed we are as a country. Even with all of the things going wrong, and have gone wrong. There's still much to be thankful for and grateful for. And, we, as Americans, I submit, we need to keep in our thoughts and our hearts and our mentality an attitude of gratitude, because that really is important, because this is indeed one nation under God. We can't ever forget that. And if we hope to be blessed, then you know what? We better have an attitude of thanksgiving, an attitude of gratitude. So this time of year, the day we set aside for Thanksgiving, let me just refresh our collective memories a little bit about the history of Thanksgiving. Traditionally, more and more, Thanksgiving is the day to sit around and watch a little football, maybe go out and, if you're a sportsman, go hunt some ducks or do something outdoors in the morning, come out in the afternoon, have a nice feast, watch some more football, do whatever. And it's all now being primed commercially for the big day after Thanksgiving sale. It's called Black Friday. Yeah, golly, gotta go out and spend, consume. The reality is, that the retail sales figures for Black Friday is really what the economists gauge the entire year on. And many retail outlets, they've got to make it from the 25th day, the day after Thanksgiving, through December, because that's 80 some odd % of their whole retail year. Buying for Christmas, getting their orders in for Santa. I'm not against consumerism. shopping and getting nice things. That's not what this program is talking about today. It's just, again, we got to focus on, focus on an attitude of gratitude. And that means, if you got to go out there and shop till you drop and camp out. I can't believe the numbers of people that actually pitched tents on grassy areas of parking areas for the doorbuster sales, the small price, low priced items. It's just amazing. And each and every Black Friday across this great country, some mad shoppers run over and trample other people, and people are injured and hospitalized and hurt. Shop till you drop. Again, that's, for better or for worse, that's our society. That's, for the most part, this country. And yeah, we do lead the world in gross domestic product. We produce goods and we produce services. And yes, we have a lot of military spending. And again, checking my blog and my email questions from people that listen to the show regularly and send me notices and comments. They kind of get the wrong idea sometimes. Maybe it's not being clear in what I'm espousing and exposing. And that's, communication is tough on a monologue when you're not really dialoguing, not having two people talk. But it goes again back to simply what made America great during the so-called baby boom generation, the coming of age party in 1962 under John Fitzgerald Kennedy's presidency. We lost a lot of our naivety as a nation during those years where we lost our silver coinage. The 1792 Coinage Act was basically gutted. And again, let me be very clear that I'm not saying that we should go to a silver standard. I'm not saying we should, most definitely saying we should not go to a gold standard. Because you see, America does not have, I'm talking America as the public, as we the people, we do not have the gold. The lion's share, the vast bulk of the gold is held by the House of Rothschild. And the golden rule is specifically he who has the gold can make the rules in a gold-based society. If you take all of the ounces of this yellow metal throughout all the world, all that's been mined since the dawn of creation, and all together, there is roughly 2 trillion United States dollar valuations. That's at the current London fix prices. Yet the currency, the circulating currencies of the world are far, far in excess of that. You see the dilemma. I had a discussion with a friend of mine through the internet, and this gentleman is very much a person who studies the consolidated annual financial reports of different entities, the CAFRs, so-called. He thinks very highly of Mr. Walter Burien and his exposure of what's really in these annual financial reports. We hear rhetoric all the time in alternative media from Congressman Ron Paul's camp and others that, this Federal Reserve System is out of control, that there is no audit. There is no audited system. They've never withstood an audit. Let's debunk that one right now. An audit consists of basically validating by means of an independent CPA accounting firm audited financial statements. Now that is exactly what every year and every quarter the consolidated financial reports are indeed prepared and audited by top 10 worldwide CPA firm. So it's no big secret the generation of funds, the interest collected, all of that, it can be extrapolated from the financial report. Yeah, the Federal Reserve private corporation has a consolidated annual financial report that is audited. It's there. It can be seen. One of the neat little parts of that financial statement shows that you can track how many United States Federal Reserve notes, or what we call dollars, are actually in circulation at any given time, or at least printed there. It's a fact, folks, that 2008 and for the last 3 years, billions, hundreds of billions of Federal Reserve notes have been taken out of circulation, have been pulled. And when you pull that money from circulation, you can take it to the bank, because that's what starts a recession. Now, this is all, again, in the financial statements, and also a nice little section there that the Federal Reserve notes are backed by the specific tonnage of gold. It says it right there that the Federal Reserve notes are indeed backed by gold. Now, there is roughly 1 trillion face amount. We're talking just a 988 plus billion dollars, so roughly $1 trillion of face amount Federal Reserve notes circulating according to this financial report. And yet, then this gives you the total amount of metric tons of actual gold as a backing for these Federal Reserve notes. Now, what does that really mean? This is the discussion I had with my friend. He says, well, CR, if you look at the total tonnage of gold and it's basically backing the note, then the dollar depends on how you look at it. If you look at it as the London fixed price, current spot price, then it's each dollar is backed by roughly 40 cents worth of gold. But if you go back to, again, the fixed standard of 490, then it's much less. What my friend is failing to realize is that is collateral for the Federal Reserve currency. The Federal Reserve is not, again, an arm or division of the United States Treasury. It is a private corporation, a company. Primary stockholders are the House of Rothschild, bankers of the Lazard bankers of Italy. It's a foreign interest, okay? It's a foreign corporation. That gold is not collateralizing it to the American people. It is collateralized to the holders and owners of the stock of the Federal Reserve Bank. That's what you got to realize. Our national treasure, our national stock of value, the international measure of wealth, the gold, is completely and totally collateralized in every way to the Federal Reserve private bankers. Now, if you look at the total value of that gold, it's, let's say, $1,600 an ounce. We're talking $488 billion. Let's say $500 billion. So you see the ratios are misleading because the currency that's out in circulation is being with the people, the government of the United States, which is again the people by representation, are being charged annual usage rates on this currency. That's how they make their profit, you see, ladies and gentlemen. And it's major profits. It's shown in the annual financial reports. What is not shown on the CAFR reports is who specifically receive these dividend interest checks each and every quarter. And what exactly then is the federal debt? Now, the federal deficit is the amount of money borrowed from the central banking Federal Reserve System each and every year to cover the budget shortfall. See, people get very confused when they start throwing numbers around. They get a little confused. They think, well, the national debt is just basically owed to our own treasury. We owe it to ourselves. This $15 trillion of national debt is nothing to be worried about. The national deficit, which is over $1 trillion this fiscal year, is nothing to be worried about because it's just basically our own system that we owe it to. That nothing could be further from the truth. Nothing at all could be further from the truth. We owe that money fraudulently generated, this debt system which is absolutely engulfed in fraud. And I say fraud because you see the people that are paying for this debt, the people that are paying the price, that have now the gold has been stolen through it. All of this is done without disclosure, without full and open disclosure to the American public. Fraud, you see, is based on people receiving incredible wealth based on lack of information. Call it a con game, okay? A confidence game. The confidence, so named, the con of confidence implies a secret. A secret that if the person being conned knew, he'd never agree to it. And I submit that's exactly the case here. If the American people just had any idea that their money supply, their bills, their legal tender in their billfolds was putting them into abject slavery, nobody would willingly sign up for that, would they? So it's a confidence game. It is a fraud. And common law is very clear. Confidence games, fraudulent transactions, voids all contract, all contracts. It includes the Federal Reserve Act of 1913, folks. It's based and rooted in fraud. Therefore, under common law, it has no binding. Therefore, if you truly understand that reality, the federal debt, the national debt, the international debt for that matter, is all just a piece of accounting ledger. Has no meaning because you see, what did the Federal Reserve bankers give as value in the contract? Oh, they printed the money, Dr. Ott. We printed the money. We circulated the money. Oh, really? Well, see, that's the role of the Treasury. That's the role of this government. Not your role. You're a private company. It's like, again, saying the Marine Corps and Delta forces of the Army Rangers. Hey, you guys, you're part of the Pentagon, you're part of the General, you're part of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Hey, let's not have the President of the United States be your Commander-in-Chief. Let's farm this military force out to a private group of mercenaries that called themselves the Hessians. Let's let them go and get paid and do all of our wars and all of our fighting for all the defense of this nation. And we're going to pay them billions and trillions of dollars for doing the privilege, you see. The armed forces is again, as part of the system of a civilian government. Now, there's misuse there, no doubt about it. The Pentagon is one area that hasn't been audited. I mean, you talk about the abuse of spending. There you go. I mean, oh my goodness. Never forget that in 2001 there was quite a bit of watchdog going on. Trillions of dollars unaccounted for. Trillions of dollars of armaments, of jet airplane parts, of jets themselves, of munitions. Who knows what a wide range of supplies were involved in that 2-point-something trillion dollars of missing inventory. But one thing was for certain, that the suspicion, the prime suspect in this manipulation was the man whose desk should have the sign, "The buck stops here." The man in control, the comptroller, Dov, that's right, Dov, D-O-V, Zakheim. Dov Zakheim. September 10th, 2001. Donald Rumsfeld. Check it out, ladies and gentlemen. You can actually call up and see this press conference. Defense Secretary Rumsfeld had to announce these missing funds, and that a full-scale investigation was underway to see who was responsible for this. The events of the next morning of September 11th changed all of that. Coincidence? No, of course not. When you talk about motives, anything really of this nature, this mass murder, this mass destruction, this mass act of terrorism, has to have a motive. Do you really believe that some Islamic fundamentalists had enough motive to, and opportunity to, bypass the North America air defense system called NORAD? Do you think they had the ability to cause confusion in our system, to have jet fighters not scramble? Do you think it's just a coincidence that Vice President Dick Cheney is in the command bunker on September 11th, where this is all orchestrated? Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, we have a lot to be thankful for. I have a lot to be thankful for. That I know the truth. That's a lot to be thankful for, because when you know the truth, it's very difficult for these double agents to manipulate you. Zionism, again, is simply a term indicative and symbolic of the new world order. Don't forget what the Nazis of Germany, the National Zionist movement, was all about. They wanted a new order, the Nazi ideal for a new government, a controlling world dictatorship. It is the same group of people still manipulating the world's financial affairs. And it's a matter, again, of Agenda 21, liquidation of the Goy as needed. Now, in the news, if you're watching the national news scene, you might have stumbled across this story. The Khmer Rouge officials, there's 4 people specifically now in their 80s. The perpetrators of the so-called killing fields of Cambodia, the Khmer Rouge. Folks, there's a great documentary, true movie on the story. It's called The Killing Fields. Imagine if you can possibly, in your mind, over 2 million people massacred over a period of about a year to 18 months. Imagine 2 million people lined up, machine gun, put in mass graves. Crime against humanity, most definitely. Will these agents of Pol Pot be convicted? Most likely. Will they be probably sentenced to death? Yes, but as we go to the break, I want you to think about something, ladies and gentlemen. Look at who orchestrated that whole Cambodian genocide and part of Agenda 21. Look who was behind that. And the name Heinz Henry Kissinger is front and center. Think about that, and I'll give you the evidence of this. We'll come back after these messages on the way. Yes, indeed. Welcome to the story behind the story. So, as you see the little blips on nightly news and in your local newspapers on the Khmer Rouge atrocities, the killing fields of Cambodia, and the trial of these octogenarians, let's talk about the story behind the story. It's a little-known fact of what went on during the 60s, again after Lyndon Baines Johnson took over, and the absolute Khazarian chief Heinz Kissinger came to play as Secretary of State under Nixon. Ladies and gentlemen, during the Nixon years and even into the Carter administration, between Zbigniew Brzezinski and Henry Heinz Kissinger, the truth can be sorted out. There would have been no Pol Pot, there would have been no Khmer Rouge without Henry Kissinger and Zbigniew Brzezinski's manipulations. It boggles my mind how Brzezinski and Kissinger are yet today the foreign policy dictators for the puppet man in the White House, Barack Hussein Obama. You don't think so? Just again, do your own research. Brzezinski, Kissinger, the foreign policy dictators, the advisors. And who is Brzezinski and Kissinger ultimately agents of? Yes, the federal banksters, the Federal Reserve banksters of the House of Rothschild. Why is this important to understand today? You know, as we look, there's something again called Agenda 21. The Agenda 21 is the systematic slaughter of billions of what these elitists call useless eaters, the Goy, G-O-Y, or Goyim, basically meaning human livestock, human cattle to be slaughtered. It means nothing to them. It's like going out and popping a lamb in the head to make Sunday dinner for Easter. Okay? It really doesn't matter to them. The sobriety of human life, the sanctity of human life is nothing to these Satanists. Let me tell you the story of Pol Pot, the Khmer Rouge. I've got files that I've compiled over this because I've followed this story. You know, Pol Pot was finally discovered in a village there, Laos and Cambodia. He was well known. They didn't know him as Pol Pot. They just knew him as a kind and gentle old man who at every juncture would counsel the people around him to obey the government, obey the leaders without question. That was his mantra. That was his motto. That's his guiding force. Obey and do so without questioning. The leaders are omnipotent. It's a dangerous philosophy, you see, when you don't question. Now there was a number of stories internationally about this, and in fact, there was a group from Finland who actually brought charges of genocide and war crimes tribunals to the Hague court. In fact, evidence was presented to the point where there was a trial held, and, you know, Kissinger and Brzezinski found guilty of war crimes. They're war criminals, but they remain still at large and still manipulating foreign policy in America. This is what is beyond belief. The controlled media will never tell this story. The controlled media will never point to blood. I mean, the huge amount of blood on the hands of Brzezinski and Heinz Kissinger. In 1991, this was the tail end of the Cambodian debacle there by the Khmer Rouge. The Washington Times had a few interesting stories in 1991. They explained and gave basic timelines how the Pentagon and Washington itself had backed the Khmer Rouge, had absolutely put them into power. The United States gave direct aid to Pol Pot. The article estimated $85 million direct aid, principally drugs, to recognize and supply Pol Pot and the Khmer Rouge. This is written by a gentleman, a researcher by the name of Ben Kiernan, entitled Cambodia's Missed Chance, published in the Indochina newsletter, the November-December issue of 1991, exactly 20 years ago. You see, China at this time was the arms supplier to Pol Pot. They supplied all of the guns and bullets and bombs in which allowed Pol Pot to massacre these innocent peasants. National Security Advisor under Jimmy Carter at the time, of course, was Zbigniew Brzezinski. He stated in a public speech to Congress and congressmen in 1979, he said, quote, I encouraged the Chinese to support Pol Pot. We could never directly support him, but China could. So you see, that's how it operated. And how did Brzezinski have access to the Chinese premier? Simply because the Chinese Communist Party is controlled, always from the very beginning, by Jewish Wall Street Khazarian bankers. That is world communism. It is, Karl Mordecai, the Khazarian imposter Jew, wrote the Communist Manifesto, changed his name from Karl Mordecai to Karl Marx. World communism, the Chinese system of communism, is directly financed and funded and directed by these so-called Jews. These Jews who say they are Jews but are not, but are, according to the book of Revelation, the synagogue of Satan. What happened in Cambodia in the later 1970s and early 80s, ladies and gentlemen, is an absolute dry run for the genocide that will come if these individuals have their way. There's two phases of Cambodian genocide that Zbigniew Brzezinski and Heinz Kissinger orchestrated behind the curtain, ladies and gentlemen. The Times newspaper, along with everybody else in the mainstream media, just really failed to mention that even before Pol Pot came to full power in the year 1975, it's a fact, this is a very secret thing, but it's a fact nevertheless, the United States Air Force had devastated Cambodia for what this Finnish government's report, this Finland independent study, referred to as a decade of planned genocide. See, it was not just the 4 years of Pol Pot's rule and killing fields from 1975 to 78. The so-called secret bombing, as it was known, the secret bombing of Cambodia by the Nixon and Kissinger elitist gang, killed just as many Cambodians as were executed by the Khmer Rouge. Not only that, but without the bombing devastation before Pol Pot, there would not have been nearly the ferocity of the Khmer Rouge genocidal behavior. Now here's why. While the media were focused on the Vietnam War, which really was the main focal point, by order of Lyndon Johnson in 1969, the United States began bombing Cambodia heavily. They again brought CIA hit squads into Cambodia. They organized the overthrow of Sihanouk in 1970. And with the South Vietnamese Saigon government, they made incursions across the border into Cambodia in the 1960s. Now, the U.S. B-52 bombers, they just pounded Cambodia for 160 consecutive days in the year 1973. The record shows, again, this is documented by the government of Finland, they dropped more than 240,000 short tons of bombs on these rice fields, villages, particularly along the Mekong River Delta. Ladies and gentlemen, let me just give you 240,000 called short tons of bombs. This is a tonnage that is equal to roughly 50%, one half of the conventional bombs dropped on Japan during World War II. I mean, think about it. This Cambodian army was a peasant society. They had no air force. They had no active military. This Finnish government, the government of Finland study estimates that 600,000 people died in this bombing campaign, and it produced 2 million homeless refugees in camps. Michael Vakari, in his own independent study, estimated 500,000 dead in this bombing campaign, what they call phase 1 of the genocide. So after this event, the Khmer Rouge became empowered, and they occupied Phnom Penh, the capital of Cambodia, in April of 1975. Cambodia was simply a nation of refugees. High U.S. officials, again, these were reports to the Pentagon. All of this kept from the mainstream media, kept from we the people. Because of the bombing campaign and the homelessness and the starvation, officials estimated 1 million deaths from starvation even before the Khmer Rouge takeover with Pol Pot. See, the Khmer Rouge, you see, had a problem. They had, all around Phnom Penh were 2 million refugees in camps, many of them just starving. They had a problem, so the killing fields began. Again, the total amount of genocide of this decade and a half, over 2.3 million Cambodian peasants dead. Now, it's just absolutely stunning that the story is, these evil Khmer Rouge executives, these officers, these mass murderers, and they don't even tell the story of Kissinger and Brzezinski. Nixon is dead and gone wherever he went, and Johnson the same way, but Kissinger is still alive and kicking, and so is Brzezinski. A decade of genocide. If you want more story of this and verification, I'm talking about author and writer Noam Chomsky tells it just like it is. There were 45 columns written on the killing fields by an independent journalist named Sidney Schanberg. He was reporting for the New York Times from Phnom Penh. The movie The Killing Fields was basically that story. But again, they didn't talk at all about what led to the refugee cities, what led to these displaced homeless 2+ million, and why it was done. See, so when we talk about the killing fields and the deaths in the genocidal decade, it's this evil, terrible dictator Pol Pot and his fanatical beliefs. He's the villain. He's the one that deserves to be hung. Him and his supporters, his henchmen. But listen, ladies and gentlemen, is it unpatriotic? Is it un-American to suggest that just maybe Brzezinski and Kissinger are even more guilty than poor Pol Pot? There was an article in the Toronto Star newspaper dated June 30th of 1997. The Toronto Star, ladies and gentlemen, is a Canadian newspaper. The Canadian Toronto Star outlined the reasons why Kissinger and Brzezinski are just as guilty as Pol Pot. Scholar by Ben Kiernan wrote also about this travesty of the United States' the State Department, Henry Kissinger's absolute support in every way of Pol Pot. And he wrote about this during the Reagan-Bush era because, again, Kissinger is still behind the scenes in Reagan-Bush. Yet even he, in an opinion, an op-ed piece dated June 20th of 1997, absolutely did not call for Kissinger and Brzezinski to be indicted as well. See, perhaps he wrote about that. Perhaps it was in the original article, but the editors, the Khazarian brethren, deleted it. That's my guess. Why do I even stress this today? Because you see, one thing is very clear. We had, I'm not sure how long ago, I think it was in the summertime, we had Harmony House founder on the show talking about Cambodia. The reality is the children being trafficked from Cambodia. Cambodia is a major center of children being used, sold, trafficked for the most horrendous crimes, ladies and gentlemen, crimes against humanity. Who is doing this and why? See, that's the big question. Absolutely incredible reality going on there. Oh my goodness. Cambodia's got a new cash crop. See, coffee grows very good there in the climate of Cambodia. So good Christian men and women are coming out and basically doing their best to bring superior coffee to the market and hopefully getting some financial means to keep parents from selling their babies and infant children into this meat grinder worldwide. Doing the best we can one day at a time. So we give thanks on this Thanksgiving time to that group. I tell you, their coffee's fantastic and phenomenal. We have it at the Odd House now every day and decaf in the evening. It's an incredibly good coffee, I tell you what. So, in a just world, we would see Kissinger and Brzezinski. I don't know I've hung by the neck until dead. It would be probably the best recommendation for war criminals of this sort. But no, we still see that Kissinger and Brzezinski are actively pulling the strings of puppet Obama. I'm just playing around here. There is a number of even publicized. If you go online and just type in Obama and Brzezinski, you see all kinds of documentation. How Zbigniew Brzezinski is Obama's puppeteer. And even Obama in his speech declares, and this is on YouTube, how he does nothing without the agreement and the direction of Dr. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that's the story behind the story for the first hour. We'll be right back with more, a little bit of American Jeopardy after these messages. Stay tuned. And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back for the second hour of the story behind the story. This guy just keeps on, like the ever-ready bunny. He just keeps on ticking, and yet, no doubt about it, this man is a criminal mastermind. This is a CNBC interview. And before we go there, let's do American Jeopardy. This is the answer American Jeopardy's question today. Let's go with it. He surfaced as the Secretary of State to President Richard Milhouse Nixon, but has always remained behind the scenes, even to the point of becoming appointed to head up the investigative team of September 11th, 2001. Yeah, that's the answer. No doubt about it. It's got to be who is Dr. Henry Heinz Kissinger. Well, once in a while, this guy comes out of the shadows. People ask me, well, what do you think of Sarah Palin? Besides being the ultimate Barbie hairhead, without a teleprompter, hey, what just floored me was her recent this last summer, her meeting in a very, very chummy meeting with Henry Kissinger, with pictures came out with, giving him an embrace, a full body hug and a kiss. That Sarah Palin got to, doesn't she know what kind of a slime war criminal with massive blood on his hands this man is, and you are kissing him like he's your uncle? Gotta, sorry, that tore it for me. Okay, listen up, ladies and gentlemen. I'm gonna play this the best I can. I hope you can hear. This is Kissinger himself talking about his puppet, Barack Hussein Obama. Listen up.
Obviously, you're here to talk about the anniversary for U.S.-China diplomatic relations, but if you had to say this is going to be the country or the conflict or the place that will define the Obama administration, what would it be?
The president is coming into office at a moment when there are upheaval in many parts of the world simultaneously. India, Pakistan, that you have the jihadist movement. So he can really say this one problem that it's
Did you get that, ladies and gentlemen? Kind of hard to hear, I know. But Kissinger flat out, this is just a very recent blip by this criminal. He was there on the floor of the Wall Street area, and reporters came up and just asked him some questions about all of this unrest, these revolutions, not only in Egypt but Syria and Libya and all this in the Middle East, these uprisings. What did this Kissinger piece of garbage say? Oh, it's time for upheaval. Upheaval is good. Upheaval is good. It is time for a new world order. It is time, and Barack Obama is the agent for creating this new world order. You heard it? Ladies and gentlemen, that's indeed what Barack Obama's assignment is. And every president's assignment by these mind-warped pieces of excrement. Again, how can the Khmer Rouge be put on trial without the people that actually brought them to power and supplied the force necessary to do it? It's Kissinger and Brzezinski. Put them on trial. Put them on trial. Again, I don't think pointing this out is necessarily negative. You just have to identify who the enemies of America are, foreign and domestic. Let's do a little bit of digging today, shall we? Let's just go back and find out a little bit about Henry Heinz Kissinger and who he really is, okay? You know, there's a website that's amazing. This is Henry A. Kissinger. Henry A. Kissinger. HenryAKissinger.com is the website. You come on, you click on HenryAKissinger.com, and you see this guy's pictures. Like he's still like the ever-ready bunny in his later years. He just keeps on ticking. Henry A. Kissinger was sworn in on September 22nd, 1973, as the 56th Secretary of State, a position he held until January 20th, 1977. Now, see, even though Nixon collapsed, even though Gerald Ford came in as the new puppet master, Kissinger remained in his position. He also served as assistant to the president for National Security Affairs from January 20th of 1969 until November 3rd of 1975. So he's not only Secretary of State, but he is assistant to the president in charge of national security, starting with Lyndon Baines Johnson. At present, as today, 2011, Dr. Kissinger is chairman of Kissinger Associates, Inc., an international consulting firm. The purpose of this website, it says, to bring together in one convenient location Dr. Kissinger's recent writings and statements. These include his numerous articles on United States foreign policy, international affairs, and diplomatic history syndicated by Tribune Media Services International. Whoa. There it is. You know, I used to tell this joke, and it's time to, laugh a little bit. See, Dr. Henry Kissinger was, needed to get back to Washington, D.C. from a little town in Iowa. He had to get back immediately, so he went to the local airstrip, and there was a little private jet, it wasn't really a turboprop jet. It had a pilot and a co-pilot, and it was chartered for a priest and a tree hugger, a hippie, an Occupy Wall Street type, the type, and they had to get back to Washington. So Kissinger jumps on. He says, "Oh, great, I'll pay to get on this." So he became the third passenger. They get airborne. The turboprop starts doing some funny things, starts to coughing, and then one engine fails and the other one starts coughing, and suddenly the plane is just kind of gliding, and then the intercom comes up and they said, "We were only expecting 2 passengers, so we only have 2 emergency parachutes. This is your co-pilot. The pilot is already ejected. We only have 5 minutes before crashing. Goodbye." And then the co-pilot jumps out. So that leaves the pastor and the hippie and Dr. Kissinger to figure out who goes down with the plane. And immediately, Dr. Kissinger in his nice suit jumps up, and he immediately grabs a parachute and said, "Everybody knows that I am the smartest man in the world. Without me, the world would be in deep trouble. So I must have this parachute." And he grabs and puts it on and jumps out of the plane. With that, the good pastor, an elderly gentleman, stands up and he said, "Son, you're a very young man. You've got a lifetime of learning and goodness, and you promised me you'll do good. I've lived a good life, and I'm ready to meet my Savior. So, my friend, take this last parachute, and may God be with you." The tree hugger jumps up and he said, Hey, brother, it's cool. The smartest man in the world just jumped out with my knapsack on." Thought that was a kind of a cute story. The smartest man in the world is an absolute puppet himself of the House of Rothschild, his bloodline. Biography of Henry Alfred Kissinger. Absolutely incredible. This man received the Nobel Peace Prize in 1973. The Presidential Medal of Freedom, the highest civilian award possible, in 1977. And the Medal of Liberty. This is given only to foreign-born American leaders. Given this in 1986. Hey, I got an idea. I nominate Barack Hussein Obama today for this Medal of Liberty. He is a foreign-born American leader. He should deserve it too. Why is this German Nazi war criminal named Kissinger getting all these medals? See, Dr. Kissinger was born in Forth, Germany. Came to the United States in 1938, became a naturalized citizen during the year of 1943. He went to school at Harvard in 1950, received his degree, graduated summa cum laude from Harvard in 1950, received his master's degree and PhD degrees from Harvard, 1952 and 1954. 1954 until 1969, when he became involved in Lyndon Baines Johnson's cabinet. He's a member of the faculty of Harvard University, the Department of Government, and the Center for International Affairs of Harvard. He was director of the so-called Harvard International Seminar from 1952 to 1969. In case you don't know, the Harvard International Seminar became absolutely part of the Trilateralist Commission and the Bilderberg structures. Okay, all of you look at the links to Harvard, to Yale, to you see the influence of these bloodlines. What made this guy such a brain, the smartest man in the world? What made this man's opinions of foreign policy of a new world order so correct? Simply because, you see, he's an agent of the House of Rothschild out of Fourth Germany. Don't think so? Prove it wrong. Prove it wrong. So this guy, here's some of his books. This latest book is simply titled On China, published this year, 2011. Also this year, a book called Years of Renewal. Another book, Years of Upheaval. And the book White House Years, all published this year, 2011. He's a busy little writing boy, isn't he? Yeah, how much of this is ghostwritten? On China, see, it was under Kissinger that China, communist Red China, began to be again recognized, and relations of incredible trade missions began under Kissinger's White House, and Nixon and Ford. Excuse me, this is a regime that imprisons Christians and confiscates and burns Bibles, and you normalize and build relations with this anti-Christian force called Red China. Oh, by all means, let's give him another Peace Prize for this. 2003, Kissinger's book. I have this one on the shelf myself, called Crisis. Crisis, the anatomy of two major foreign policy crises. 2003. He takes credit in his book 2003, Ending the Vietnam War, A History of America's Involvement in and Extrication from the Vietnam War, 2003. 2001, Does America Need Foreign Policy Toward a Diplomacy for the 21st Century? Isn't that a similar title to the position paper of the policy or for a new American century, the PNAC group, the think tank, that called for a new Pearl Harbor to implement foreign policy objectives, the same foreign policy objectives that in 2001 were published in Kissinger's book. All again around a strong Israel. Oh my goodness. How about a book, Dr. Kissinger, on 2.3 million faces dead in a place called Cambodia? How about writing that one? Shall we? I got a couple of authors from Finland that will help you write the truth about this one. Yet this guy still dictates policy to Barack Hussein Obama. Go figure. Well, let's go forward. Henry Kissinger. There's a great called the website is zpub.com. Z is in zebra, pub, pub.com /un Florence wanted H. Kissinger, H. Kiss. War crimes, wanted for war crimes. Here's his picture. This is great. Aliases. Henry Alfred Kissinger, Heinz Alfred Kissinger, also known as the Butcher of Cambodia. Age, 80 plus, male. Race, Khazarian Jew and Asiatic, ? Caution, it says in big red letters, caution, in the minutes of a secret 1975 meeting of the National Security Council attended by President Ford, revealed Henry Kissinger grumbling and saying, "Quote, it is an act of insanity and national humiliation to have a law prohibiting the president from ordering assassination." This is from a publication called The Lost Crusader, The Secret Wars of CIA Director William Colby, Oxford University Press, published in 2003. Let me get that, make sure you understood that he was on record, he was declaring it, quote, "It is an act of insanity and national humiliation to have a law prohibiting the president from ordering assassination." That's the mindset of this guy. The February and the March 2001 issues of Harper's Magazine feature a series of stories by Christopher Hitchens on the case for charging Henry Heinz Kissinger with war crimes. Part 1 is the making of a war criminal. Part 2, the extensive section not only on Cambodia but on the genocide of East Timor. This is a review of Christopher Hitchens' piece, The Trial, calling the trial of Henry Kissinger. Trial, they call it for a trial. Harper's Magazine. This is a review of that by Mike McLaughlin that is pretty accurate. McLaughlin writes, quote, "Hitchens presents a rather straightforward argument that establishes two seemingly undeniable propositions. On at least one occasion, Henry Kissinger conspired to commit murder, and that on numerous other occasions, Henry K. was the primary force behind certain acts that could only be considered war crimes. The case where Henry K. is a murder conspirator is what Hitchens calls a, quote, lay-down case. In essence, one that stands out for its clear facts and clear law. The murder victim is General Rene Schneider, who was the commander-in-chief of the Chilean army that's in South America, Chile, ladies and gentlemen, whom Hitchens misidentifies as the Chilean chief of staff. According to Hitchens, in the 09 September 1970 minutes of the 40 Committee of 40, the Kissinger-chaired secret panel that oversaw U.S. covert operations. This is minutes now. Documents. September 9th, 1970 now, okay? The Chilean military had a strong tradition of neutrality in political affairs, a rarity on the South American continent. General Schneider was known as an officer committed to upholding the Chilean constitution and therefore opposed to the rumored incipient coup against newly elected socialist president Salvador Allende by a right-wing would-be junta of current and former Chilean military officers. By means of United States government communication cables from the Central Intelligence Agency and documents from the State Department and the White House, Hitchens relates the facts of Kissinger's direct involvement in the direction, the planning, the financing, and general support by the organs of the United States government in the plot to assassinate General Schneider. Oh boy. The week of August 15th to the 21st of 2001. Again, this is just before September 11th rocked the world. There's an article entitled How You Can Do What the Government Won't. Arrest Henry Kissinger. There's also Los Angeles Weekly Review, WLS Review, Henry, Portrait of a Serial Kissinger. It's called Manhattan's Milosevic. Manhattan's Milosevic. The Village Voice, week of August 15th through 21st. Quote, bring Henry Kissinger to justice for crimes against humanity. Consider, though, what happened to the last people to talk even jokingly about plans for a citizen's arrest of the real-life model for Dr. Strangelove. An indictment of Henry Kissinger for genocide, crimes against humanity, and war crimes would include, but not be confined to, the following. And list them. Henry Kissinger, war criminal or old-fashioned murderer? Question mark. Welcome to the Henry Kissinger unindicted terrorist file. Oh, golly. A quote, incredibly, Henry Kissinger, the man who rivals even Pol Pot for the dubious honor of being the person responsible for the death of the largest number of innocent people in Southeast Asia. Story behind the story continues. Why is this guy allowed to be above the law? Just a question. We'll be back, ladies and gentlemen, with the final segment of today's story behind the story. Please don't go away. Thanks for listening. Back, ladies and gentlemen. You ever heard about the tailwind story that came out on CNN. A couple of reporters had, done some incredible work on this. That was absolutely true. You see, it's a story, ladies and gentlemen. This is July of 1998. CNN did a report, issued it on television, that U.S. Special Forces operating covertly, absolutely illegally in Laos in 1970 had used nerve gas, chemical weapon, as part of Operation Tailwind, which Operation Tailwind, you see, targeted American defectors. This report on CNN contained on-air, on-the-record comments from several Tailwind participants to the effect that sarin nerve gas was used and that United States defectors were indeed killed. So what happened? Immediately, the producers, last name Oliver and Smith, were fired. Their 18-minute report was downplayed. First from, again, this is 1998, the military-industrialist complex establishment. Top on the list, Henry Kissinger, who was fingered for this. Colin Powell, former CIA chief Richard Helms, again, shut this down, and CNN was forced to retract the story. Reporters and producers Oliver and Smith were summarily fired. Welcome to the mainstream media, folks. See, what happened in that story of Tailwind and the reporting, you see, if you follow the trail even deeper, you find out where it goes into the killing fields of Cambodia and Pol Pot, and really how the genocide was established in Cambodia. Again, it's all, a dry run for Agenda 21, how to mass murder millions of people. Unindicted terrorist, indeed. Oh, golly. As you read and study the allegations made in that Operation Tailwind story, it's just absolutely stunning. A writer, talking about this whole obscenity of Henry Kissinger, was either war criminal or old-fashioned murderer. He writes, the latest obscenity is this. Strikes me as outrageous, but sadly indicative of the pro-American bias of the media. Even the media that claims, as CNN does, to be international and thus free of American-only bias, that CNN would conduct the following interview with Henry Kissinger and print the actual transcript on their website, and yet never even allude to the fact that Henry Heinz Kissinger has a long history of terrorist sponsorship that makes even Osama bin Laden's pale in comparison. The death toll for which Kissinger bears responsibility in Indochina alone is in the millions. And Kissinger was the one who expanded that to neighboring states with warning authorization to bomb the areas. the killing in East Timor into China, for which Kissinger and Ford promised and delivered U.S. backing, reached genocidal levels. And with the help of Daniel Patrick Moynihan in the United Nations, the Ford administration managed to keep the facts, the truth of that genocide off the world agenda, as Moynihan bragged in his memoir book, A Dangerous Place. At the time of the East Timor invasion, Moynihan was the United States ambassador to the United Nations. He wrote in the book A Dangerous Place a couple of years later that the United States State Department desired things to turn out as they did in East Timor, and that it was his responsibility to render the United Nations, quote, utterly ineffective in anything it might do, quote, and I carried it forward with no inconsiderable success. Moynihan proudly declared this, knowing that, quote, some 60,000 people had been killed by the Indonesian murderers in the first weeks of the invasion, a figure that he was well aware of represented 10% of the population of East Timor. Months later, 140,000 more Timorese were to die at the hands of Suharto's murderers, armed and trained by the United States through Henry Kissinger's State Department. Moynihan, after running interference for the Indonesian killers, declared the world, quote, for the moment stable. It was Henry Kissinger who made sure the money and armaments to carry out this genocide never ceased flowing from the United States and its allies. A policy continued by every succeeding U.S. administration, including up to Clinton's. The Taliban, says Henry Kissinger below, must, quote, dismantle the structure of terrorism, as well as give up this one man, bin Laden. The U.S. naturally is obliged to do neither one, and the man they ought to be giving up to the docks of an international court on crimes against humanity is instead living well and giving color commentary on terrorism to CNN and other news networks and of the complicit mainstream media. He's the media darling. He really, truly is. So, what shall we do? There was a CNN interview with CNN's Paula Zahn. Where he came up and was, the media darling during the week or so after September 11th. CNN comes in and brings him on by announcing, introducing him this way: Henry Kissinger, U.S. Secretary of State and National Security Advisor, played a large role in the U.S. policy during the latter part of the Vietnam War. He talked with CNN's Paula Zahn on Monday about last week's terrorist attacks on U.S. targets and offers his perspective on the road ahead. Here's what CNN asked him. CNN, let's start off with the latest development. We know that Pakistan's top spy and a former ambassador to Afghanistan have gone to the Taliban and issued their demand. Give us Osama bin Laden in the next 3 days or face military action. What's going to happen as a result of that demand? Kissinger, quote, well, I think it's an ultimatum. And if you there will be military action. But I believe we have to go after the Taliban anyway. They've been supporting these terrorist activities all over the area and all over the world, and it isn't enough for them to give up one man. They have to dismantle the structure of terrorism. Oh. So, as you see, Osama bin Laden, no, it wasn't enough. They were going to attack the Taliban and invade Afghanistan no matter what. CNN, do you have any confidence that someone can accomplish that? I think Madeleine Albright in the last hour said it's like cutting off the head of a snake and having all these other little parts trail behind. Kissinger, well, in part, that is correct. Of course it's correct. Madeleine Albright's a fellow Khazarian Jew. Well, in part, it's correct. These little groups require a base. They require money. They require organization. And if we can get them on the run, and if they have to spend all their energy surviving, they can't plan these meticulously prepared attacks that we saw in New York and in Washington. And it isn't only Afghanistan. There are countries like Syria that have bases. Sudan, some are probably in Algeria. And we have to put governments on notice that if they extend safe havens to terrorists, they will run the risk that terrorists do. CNN, so are you telling me this morning the United States and its allies might find themselves in the position of attacking Syria and perhaps Iraq? Kissinger, no, I don't think we have to attack Syria because Syria will close down these camps if they are brought under enough pressure. Iraq, I would be open-minded on. If they have any ties to these terrorist networks, they should be attacked. CNN, let's explore further the impact of Pakistan, now offering its support to the United States in exchange for retiring $30 billion worth of debt and some other things they want taken care of by the United States. There are folks like the Northern Alliance. Don't hear much about the Northern Alliance anymore in Afghanistan. But there are folks like the Northern Alliance, the opposition front to the Taliban, that says, don't trust Pakistan. Do you trust Pakistan? Kissinger, I don't know. I would judge countries by their performance now, not by their words. The American objective has to be to break up these terrorist organizations. I'm not saying that all had to be done with military force. For example, there could be a ban on travel to any country that has safe haven for terrorists, added to economic pressures. But in the end, these terrorist groups must have training bases. They prepare these things at great leisure. And it is dangerous for all of us, suicidal to let them get organized, hit us, then take one retaliatory blow and come back 2 or 3 years later with another disruptive, murderous attack. CNN. So while the Bush administration is exploring military options, it is working around the clock to build a number of different kinds of coalitions. Where do you think Russia is in all of this? Well, Russia is a very curious position. Jeez. And I hope some of the reports that I have read aren't true because no country has been. I was in Russia in July and talked to many of their leading people. Well, that makes you feel good, doesn't it, folks? Who are their leading people in Russia? The Russian mafia. Again, it's because they're not called communists doesn't mean they're not Khazarian. The KGB, these are the brethren. These are the blood relatives of Heinz Kissinger. He goes on, quote, and their sense is leading people. Their sense was the danger of fundamentalists and terrorists, of course. They were thinking in part of Chechnya. Now they seem to be holding back a little bit vis-a-vis Afghanistan because they must have some pleasure in watching the Americans get involved in Afghanistan. But at the end of the day, all these countries have to understand that they are targets even before we are. We're just a symbol. When they went after us, it was a symbol to everybody else that if even America can be attacked, what chance do you people have? And that's why we need a broad coalition. But we cannot be made dependent on whether everybody agrees. CNN, Secretary of State Colin Powell mentioned that an executive order that was put into place in 1976 on President Ford's watch that forbids assassination is today under review. If that is lifted, and if the United States and its allies can specifically target Osama bin Laden, who the president says is the prime suspect, how will that change the efforts in the months to come? Kissinger. Not much. We're not good at this. If this assassination order was interpreted that we couldn't bomb a building in which Osama is located, then it will free us for that sort of attack. But hiring assassins to go after individuals is not something Americans are very good at. Yeah, but the Khazars are, folks. I support whatever Secretary Powell proposed, and altogether I'm impressed by the decisiveness of the administration. So I don't think that will be the key element. The key element will be, one, whether we can generate a consensus. Secondly, whether we will keep going after our initial hopeful success, because this is going to be a long effort, as the president has said. See, you got to get a picture of this thing. He is setting the stage with his propaganda machine, knowing full well who really was behind the terrorist attack, so-called, of 9/11. He knows. No, there's no doubt about it. He knows. CNN, you said that, and Sunday we heard a number of cabinet secretaries repeat that same message. What is it that the American public should be prepared for? I heard someone say a 10-year war. Well, it could be a prolonged war, but its intensity will diminish. And after a while, it will be a mopping up operation. And what we have to remember is if we don't do it, we will remain permanently vulnerable. People who rely on us and others who even don't rely on us are going to be under an even greater threat than we are. And that means that the world will be dominated by terrorists. And we can't tolerate this. One last question for you. Do you think U.S. intelligence knows where Osama bin Laden is today as we speak? Well, they probably don't know the street number, but they probably have a general idea of the region where he's located. And we ought to give some credit to our intelligence services because they've been under tremendous pressure from our domestic institutions, and they have a tough job. My goodness. This is CNN archives. Now you see his ties to Pol Pot, war criminal, most definitely. You can't indict and try the Khmer Rouge today without having an indictment on Henry Kissinger, because they only were acting under directions of their supplier. Can Henry Kissinger be extradited? Indeed. Should be. Yeah. World Bureau of Truth, Department of Injustice. If you have any information concerning this, this is Kissinger Associates, Inc., 350 Park Avenue, New York, New York. Well, the firm of Kissinger, McClarty, and Richardson, strategic consulting firm. My goodness, there's a Judicial Watch story on this one. That's a whole nother story. Judicial Watch, McClarty. Judicial Watch is the, again, because no one is above the law, they're just a watchdog group. Flat out, what a slimy bunch of snails and skunks. Kissinger, McClarty, and Richardson. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's the end of today's program. Again, just remember that everything you see in the newspaper, there's a story behind that story. Yeah, let's bring criminals to justice and the killing fields of Cambodia, but we need to indict and extradite this guy named Heinz Kissinger and his cohort Zbigniew Brzezinski. They deserve to be tried and convicted as well. Because, they're guilty. It's obvious. The research has been done. But you're going to hear it only here because the mainstream media won't touch this guy. Because why? Yeah, that's right. He's a downtrodden Jew. Came over from Germany to escape the wrath of Adolf Hitler. Oh, please, make you want to puke. Be well. Have a happy Thanksgiving. Be back later. I'd be gone Friday, but be back Monday.